clink. Sibbity hi. 5, 9, 10, 11. Beep, ba, 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 ba. Oops. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. That should have been the first one. You know, we're going to take this from the top. Nah. Sorry about. I'm rushing a little bit, but I got a web series to do a little bit later. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do 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 do. What? Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right. So I would like to. Blah, 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 blah. Lee, lee, la, la, la. Sorry, I should have done my warm-ups before I started. I just pounded a pot of coffee, so you'll have to excuse me. I'm going to start with something I think I talked about a few weeks ago, but it's Astro City Metro Book Volume 3. We're square into where I really don't need this. I have all of these, and I bought them as they came out. By the time this chapter of Astro City came out, I was buying it regularly. The bulk of this collection collects the story known as the Dark Ages, and it was there were 4 6-issue miniseries, and it is the longest sustained Astro City arc thus far. Anyway, I'd be very surprised if they did another longer one ever. I mean, hell, they did like a special last year in front of this collection. Excuse me, one second. In front of these collections. And I was also under the impression that there would be more new Astro City coming, but I guess I was wrong. Or, I mean, I don't know. I could Google it and see when it's coming out, but I don't care. Suffice it to say, it holds up very well. I remember at the time getting a little bored with it here and there, but when you read it all in one go like this, it really is better. The brilliant thing about Astro City, or one of them anyway, is that the stories are always told from a different point of view, and they're almost always told from the point of view of a civilian, of a non-superpowered person. Not entirely, like the Steel Jack stories were definitely told from his point of view, and like the Altar Boy and Confessor storyline, that was all Altar Boy as the narrator. But even in those instances, Steel Jack was like a 2-bit villain, and Altar Boy was a sidekick. So you rarely get the superhero's perspective, because you can get that in any other superhero comic. That's what Astro City is sort of setting out to do, is to tell superhero stories through the perspective of anyone but a superhero. It also, and this is maybe not a topic I should be dancing around. But the majority of this book takes place in the 1970s, and the 2 protagonists, who are brothers, are black fellows. And one of them is a cop who is, very clean cut, and the other is a 2-bit hood who's definitely not. But then, we see both of how, how being straight-laced and clean cut is not always the best thing, and how to be like a kind of a opportunistic, criminal, also not great. But also it puts me in mind, and this could just be projecting on my part, but because Kurt Busiek and Brent Anderson, to my knowledge, are not black and are in fact white fellows. But, and this has been true, certainly true when I was a kid, and I think it was true in the 70s, is that was around when black culture was becoming far more fascinating to white guys. And I was very much one of those kids in late junior high, early high school who tried to talk like Flavor Flav in everyday life, and, to find out the hard way that doesn't really work. But, in the 70s in superhero comics, you had guys like Luke Cage and Shang-Chi, who I would also argue is black. It would be a stretch, but I think I could do it. And so I think that's also on display here in Astro City. That Busiek is writing. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't be writing black characters or anything like that, but I do think there is, like again, you had Luke Cage, you had Black Panther had been around since the '60s, but he didn't get his own book until the '70s, if I'm not mistaken. Deathlock, Misty Knight. Even the Hulk got like a black guy sidekick. He no longer had Rick Jones, but he had Jim, whose last name I've forgotten because I'm a racist. So yeah, there really was like an uptick in black culture and comics. Certainly not, certainly not very necessarily very accurate. There's a lot of black characters in '70s comics that you're like, oh, a white guy definitely wrote this guy. But yeah, I still think it's there's so much about Astro City. There's so many meta layers, meta fictional layers going on, and I had not really noticed that one before. But again, I think reading it in one go was really good, and it also was very much Kurt Busiek's sort of take on the post '60s, post Nixon. That's where it all takes place. And like the Silver Agent, people find out is like a traitor of some sort, even though it's shown that he's not by the end of the story. But people are starting to question authority, and people are, there's riots and tension, and so it was like a very Taxi Driver vibe going on, and it was really well done. I mean, he wasn't. I wouldn't say that Busiek was shining light on that era of American history that hadn't been there before, but doing it through the lens of superhero comics, as always, is going to make it more interesting for me anyway. So Volume 4 comes out in September, and I'm hoping at that point, because I'm pretty sure that's when he went over to Vertigo, and they brought the book over to Vertigo, and I did read those. I want to say the first year of that series, but then I kind of lost interest, which would happen with Astro City. But now I think it really might be a thing. For one thing, it is somewhat nostalgic for me to read Astro City, but also because I think these stories probably work better in collections, which is a touch ironic since superhero comics are traditionally monthly. But hey, we're not here to sit on tradition. Is that the thing I want? No. The saying? Absolutely not. All right. So first up, Peacemaker Tries Hard, #1. This was really fun. Kyle Starks is really getting up there as one of my favorite writers. Oh, and I meant to look up Steve Pugh. I guess it doesn't matter. The artist Steve Pugh I also know from stuff, and he does a great job. This does feel like a lot. I mean, I haven't watched the show, but it feels very much in line with the show. It's definitely in line with the character as established in The Suicide Squad. And that's good. I don't know. It made me laugh a few times. It's got swear words in it. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. Star Signs #1, on the other hand, it was good. Like, I was really more into Terror War that Saladin Ahmed wrote. I guess that was just a week ago, or a week previous, anyway. But here we have our young hero is a Lebanese gal from Brooklyn, and she suddenly discovers she has the power to manipulate time, which apparently has to do with being a Taurus, which I know, despite the fact that I live in Los Angeles, I know next to nothing about astrology, and I'm going to keep it that way. But it's not bad, but it's not. I mean, it's not like I've been talking a lot lately about Ahmed and his body of work thus far, and I feel like it's better than his more mainstreamy things, but not quite as good as his other smaller stuff. And you can see my new Ghoulies poster in the corner. Sorry, I don't know why you can't even see what I'm pointing at. And then finally, and this when I say finally, I mean it a little bit literally. We have Before the Fall, X-Men: Before the Fall: Sons of X #1. I couldn't finish this. This sucked. End of story. They did the exact, well, not the end of the story. They did the exact same thing as they have been doing. I don't know why I didn't. Well, I didn't see it coming because I assumed that Before the Fall was going to be a line-wide sort of, and perhaps it still will be, but they did the same thing that they did with that Captain Britain series, which I don't know if I mentioned that, but I dropped that after one issue also. And it's basically, this is just where Captain Betsy Braddock, Captain Britain, was a continuation of Knights of X, which itself was a continuation of Excalibur, which itself I had dropped 7-8 months ago. That's the same thing here, except that we're talking about Legion of X. And this is written by Cy Spurrier, whose work I do enjoy, but I've also realized that Spurrier's favorite character is David Haller, who is Professor X's wayward son. I didn't just realize that. I've known that for a while because he's written him. I don't think there, I would be surprised if there was even a year in there that didn't see a Legion comic written by Cy Spurrier. And he's great with the character. He's definitely written more stories about Legion that I've given a crap about in the last 25, 30 years. But I still don't really care that much about it. He did, the first series he did, which was called X-Men Legion, that I think would probably hold up. If I went back and read that again, I think I would enjoy it again. But lately it's just been all kind of same. And there's the same problem with that as with that Betsy Braddock Captain Britain. There's no action. It's all, hey, we're going to catch you all up because you suckers bought a #1 thinking it was going to be a new series, when really it's just Legion of X number 30 or 34 or whatever, wherever it would be. And so it's the whole fucking issue is just exposition, and it's a real waste of Phil Noto. It's a waste of Cy Spurrier. And I don't even blame him. I, once again, have no problem laying this at the feet of editorial, but I definitely, and as I go on with this particular rant, I think you'll see what I mean. But I don't want to be like, comics suck now, because I've heard that every fucking day of my life since late '88. Fresh for '88, you suckers. And that's horseshit. Comics are always going to be great, just because Marvel's not putting out the best stuff, or because this, or because that, or because the other thing. There are thousands of millions even, thousands of them here in my room that are still waiting to be read and discovered and enjoyed. I will say, though, that it does really seem right now like the industry is in a very iffy place. And I'm the biggest booster that Marvel Comics has ever had. I can say that with more than some certainty. But this sucked. I went to see the new Guardians movie last night. I fucking walked after 20 minutes. The cracks are really starting to show. If I'm starting to turn tail, ugh. But this kind of has all come to a head in the last week. I'm not going to go into the details. I quit my job at the comic book store the other day, and if you want the grisly details, you'll have to wait until Kitty Kelly finishes writing that tell-all about me. But suffice it to say, it was not how I wanted things to end. But, and I'm not going to admit this to my therapist no matter what, it really was really probably for the best. And more like a bigger deal than that is that I'm quitting Wednesdays. I have not missed a new comic book day since late 2001. And I think I'm okay. I have, next to here, I have 12 short boxes. Each short box holds about 150 comics. Never been read. I can't even begin to count the number of books I have on these shelves up here. And then I also have 3 or 4 stacks of books to be read next to my bed. You know, the ones that I need to read right away. Now, all this, I don't have any problem with buying, like, it's been years now since I realized that buying books is just something I do. I like having books around. It's like they're furniture or decorations to me. So, and I don't really spend money on that sort of thing in general. So I buy books with that money. But I am looking forward to finally catching up on some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Because so much of my just daily reading time, weekly reading time, has been devoted to whatever's been coming out. And I felt like this intense pressure to stay up on everything, and like doing this goofy thing and stuff like that. And then it's like kind of like I don't really need to do that. It's been 20 some years. There's basically just no reason for me to be collecting comics like I have been since I was a child. I have the Marvel Unlimited app, which is very reasonable and, not unlike with my current love affair with Bandcamp, it saves on storage space. So I have all these new comics, new to me at least, to read that I don't have to store somewhere. And, I stopped buying records a few years ago, kind of the same deal. I mean, I will buy a record every now and again, just as I'll probably buy like that Astro City Volume 4 when that comes out. But I don't need it every week. And yeah, I don't think it's necessarily so that the quality of comics has taken a dip. It very well could be. But I'm willing to entertain the notion that it's just my tastes have begun to change a little bit. And, all these years of being a super booster for Marvel Comics and being super excited by them, it's kind of petered out. When I read Jason Aaron's final issue of the Avengers the other day, and it was good, but it really felt like the end. You know what I mean? In the early 2000s, you had Bendis doing all kinds of crazy things. You had guys like Brian K. Vaughan and Jason Aaron, and like there was always another class. There was like Bendis and Vaughn and those guys, and then Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka and those guys, and Rick Remender and Matt Fraction and those guys, and these guys and those guys, and these guys and those guys. There's no more guys. The closest guys right now, I would say, are, as far as writers go, there's still plenty of incredibly talented artists out there whose work I'm looking forward to reading. But there's not really, outside of, Kelly and Lansing. Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing are a writer team. They're working on Captain America right now. They're the only guys whose stuff I'm like, oh, I'm really looking forward to the rest of this. Everyone else who's writing for Marvel right now, I just don't give a shit. They're certainly not bad writers, but they're not doing anything that I feel like I need to go down to the shop every Wednesday, much less work there in order to get, my hands on for a deep discount. So that's it. That's the end of this. It was a good run. Now I am in no way giving up comics. I'm not quitting comics. I'm not going to be selling my comics. I mean, if anything, I'm going to be redoubling my efforts with my own collection, but I'm not going to be adding to that collection. Certainly not at the rate I was, because it's just getting a little bit silly. But it feels all right. I mean, I've been reading. I finally got to the collected 8-ball last night, and it's like, oh, I feel like I'm 16 again, which is not always good. But I've got a stack of Master Kung Fu to get to, and just all these other, like print things that I want to read. I've been on a real reading jag lately, so I'm gonna keep that going. And now that I have some time off, now that I'm thoroughly unemployed, I have more time to read. Speaking of which, if you know anybody who needs a good line editor for any sort of screenplay or writing project, very reasonable rates as a freelancer. So, is that it? I think I've covered everything that I wanted to. I would still encourage you and or, anyone to support their local comic book store, to support their local brick and mortar bookshop, to support all those kinds of small businesses. I've done my time. I have been very supportive of a lot of shops and a lot of that wing of the industry that I can now I can read digital comics guilt-free. And so that's what I'm going to do for a while. I love comic books more than anything. And that's almost kind of the reason, it's like almost kind of one of the reasons I need to kind of step away from them, at least in this regard. Again, this is all stuff my shrink told me 3 years ago and I wouldn't listen, but it's a good thing he never watches this, I guess. And so we say goodbye. Our time together. I can't think of a good, Should I sweep up a spotlight at the end? Who fucking cares? Hi, everybody. You've been watching Wednesday I'm in Love with your host, Jimmy Calloway. That's a